Welcome to Wednesday night with the Nohra Foundation. I'll go ahead and open with the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic tongue, and then we'll dive into tonight's session. Dr. Eriko should be with us next week, and he's doing well, and I got to see him this past week, so thrilled that he can travel and be active again. He just flew back home and a bit tired, so I'm doing tonight's session. If you take a few seconds, deep breath, and I'll open with the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic language. أوند وشميا نتقداش شماخ تأتي ملكوتاخ نهوي صوينخ إكند وشميا أبر حولان لحمات سنكانا يومنا واشوق حوبين إكند أبحنان شوق لحيوين ولا تعلن لأنسيونا إلا بصا من بيشة مثول دي لاخي ملكوثة حي لو تشبحتا العالم عالمين Amen. Well, I'm going to continue with in a way with the same message that I started last week. I went through from Abraham, and the reason Abraham and his people who followed his religion, which wasn't really a religion, it was a different approach to spirituality altogether. So he was bringing an invisible yet familiar God to existence, and recognizing it. Obviously, Allah or Elohim or Ithya Rabba has been with us all, or before us too, before humanity even existed, but always been there. And Abraham was the one to recognize. And at the time when I read you the Genesis, even his name was not Abraham, it was Abram, and eventually it became Abraham. It changed. So, and then how that evolution of Allah, Elohim, and the followers of it went from being responsible to bring that light to all of humanity, and that was the mission they were chosen for, to becoming more of an exclusive religion and almost a religion of entitlement. If you didn't belong with us, then you're not you're against us, and so forth. And then when Jesus came, he continued the Abraham message, which is this presence. Jesus even brought it closer than Abraham did, because he referred to Allah as the Father, as the loving parent, and used that to communicate to us how Allah takes good care of us, loves us even when we make mistakes, forgives us even when we make mistakes. His doors are always open, the doors of the kingdom. And Jesus, basically, we can say he almost copyrighted the concept of this presence and called it the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, to show us how that realm, and it's not a realm, physical realm, it's a spiritual realm that is with us all the time and around us all the time. All we have to do is tune in to participate in it, and it requires action to participate. That's a very important aspect. I think last week that there was a question, and then there was even the same person asked me the question again. It's like, be more specific. And how do you change the world? How do you participate in the kingdom? How do you bring the kingdom into existence? And the person asked me not to be vague and like do good things and participate and make your community better. They wanted even like more solid examples. Jesus gave a lot of examples. I mean, when you read Jesus carefully, you'll see that he told the people, do not tithe. Leave your offering at the altar and go and reconcile with your brother if you have a quarrel with somebody. If you have somebody that you're not getting along with, that there is some work that needs to be done as far as forgiveness and so forth, go and do it now. So that's a solid example. If you have anybody in your life that you're not reconciled with, that there is some sensitivity between you, and there is they are receptive to you going and approaching them and healing that relationship and moving it out of the trouble back into the light, back into loving one another and doing things together, then go do it. If you can't, if the person is not open to that, then you start working on self-forgiveness and forgiveness of the other, whatever that, whoever was wrong doesn't matter. Because once there is an imbalance on your soul level, on your spirit level, you just have to take care of that and work through it with yourself first, and then with the other person if they're receptive. But I think the energy between you when you start doing the work, it's the healing process begins. So that's a very solid example straight from Jesus, something that you can apply to your day-to-day, people at work, people in your family, people in your childhood that you probably still feel they offended you or you did something that maybe hurt them back then. And maybe there you can't approach them. People who are even dead and no longer in your life. But there was something that every time you think of them, you get this feeling of like, I wish I wish I would have said this one more thing. Because what that does is it opens you up. It frees you to participate more in the kingdom, in the change. And then it's everybody you come. It's like we sometimes think in grandiose ways. We think of ourselves a lot bigger than where our approach is, what we can reach. And in its own way, where we can reach is really very impactful because we touch one person who can touch so many other people and so forth. You start setting that example in your community. And when I say community, it depends on where you are in life, your age, your participation, your profession, if you still are working, if you're retired, your place in your family. All those dynamics are the place to play and participate in the kingdom, because you just don't know which life you're going to change, which act of kindness when you're walking down the street, what words you say in a business meeting and at your company, your business, whether you're a leader or you're an employee or you're even a guest in another business. All those moments, and if you're coming at them from Jesus, if you're coming at them from a kingdom's perspective, from being all inclusive and loving all, watching the way you speak, all those things have an impact on other people. If you want to expand even more, you can volunteer in organizations that touch your heart and help make your community better, sometimes make the world better. So there are a lot of opportunities for us to live outside this, because most, and I'm going to pick on politics, because sometimes we think that change is going to come from politics. That if we have the right politicians, the world is going to change. And I truly believe that politics is just another angle. And Jesus had to deal with that angle. He was under Roman occupation. He was under a lot of enemies. If I was going to pull up a map of where Jesus lived, just to give you a perspective. And today that map has not really changed a lot. Maybe the lines moved left and right a little bit, but the mindset has not. And you'll see. I'm going to go ahead and do it, and I'm going to need my glasses. I usually have three monitors today. I'm doing this from a remote location, so let me do this. Share. So this is the map of what we would call the Holy Land at the time of Jesus. And if I'm just gonna scroll to the bottom, this area down here, I'm gonna zoom in if I can. This is before the time of Jesus, how these enemies developed over time. That we hear about the Hittites. This is if you're reading the Old Testament, and the division between the north and the south. There is Jerusalem. You see how it's slivered. If you go today and pull up your computer or your phone and type map of the middle, we call it the Middle East. The people who live there, they just call it home. But some people call it the appropriate, maybe political term, Near East. But again, that's west based. So even our language sometimes is offensive for people who are there because they don't think of themselves as the center of the world is England or the United States, and we bestow these names on these nations, and therefore that now they are the Near East. Well, to them, they are the center of the world, and there is a West and there is a East from there. But regardless of that, if you look at the map today, how Israel and Palestine are commingled, how a lot of the lands and those lines were not natural. Obviously, the world that does not know when you cross a piece of land that there is a border there. All those are man-made, and whoever had the power and the pen at the time at the map, they drew a line, and most of the people who drew the lines, unfortunately, were not living in the kingdom. They were not manifesting the kingdom. They were manifesting the opposite of the kingdom. They were manifesting politics. They were manifesting national and international interests of their own nations or their own group of people. The map we're looking at here is actually natural borders, and people use that. But if you look at it, even though the River Jordan, which today is the dividing line between Palestine, Israel, and Jordan, it was that this kingdom was across both sides of it. But then you see this river, which is the river that is borders today Syria and Jordan. There are, the Arameans who were considered and they took that name because they were the people who lived. That whole land was the land of Aram. And the Aramaic language that we use to translate the Bible came from the Arameans. They're the ones who developed it. But you see how even in the old days, that those natural lines sometimes were used as territorial or dividing lines, borders, and sometimes you look at this area here. It's the pink is into the orange, if you can see it, and they people. How did you know when you crossed some other tribal border, and how did you know? And that's why people circumcised, and people even to this day, when people wear their village outfits and their traditional outfits, people can immediately spot them and say, oh, that's from northern Palestine, that's from that town, that's from that village, because the embroidery that the women use for their dresses, the type of jewelry, where they hang the jewelry, the colors of the main dress, people can tell which area of the land you're from to this day. And a lot of it developed during this history, because otherwise you didn't know who was your, and they were all cousins on top of it. They were not these, distinct different people. We think of them, we hear these labels, the Philistines, who are, centered around Ascalon and today's Gaza. We hear about Sidon, which is where the Phoenicians and the Canaanites, they're one people pretty much. They were coastal people, and they were labeled that way. So today we see these labels and we think of them as different people, but they intermarried. If you read the Hebrew Bible, a lot of the time they shared, they moved between each other's religions, and the prophets of Yahweh, the prophets of Allah, didn't like that, because they felt that they had a superior God, a superior religion to the people who had these deities made out of stone or made out of sometimes even like figs. They would shape up not figs, dates, and they would shape up different gods during different seasons. So so when you think about that, and then now I'm going to move to this part of the map, which is more of the Jesus time. I'm going to shrink it a little bit. You see how Judea was here, Petra, which we know about today, and you can go visit it next time you're in Jordan. And then you have Gilead, and then you have Samaria almost cut through. So if you wanted to go between Judea and Galilee, where Jesus was, this is Jesus' stomping ground. This is where yeah, his ministry developed, and this is where he grew up. You had often to cross this very dangerous territory. The Sumerians and the Jewish people did not like each other. They have a lot of history that divided them, and there were two temples, and they had their own temple for Yahweh. And a Jewish king went and destroyed it. So that was after years of not liking each other. The Samaritans still exist to this day. This is their holy spot here, Mount Gerizim. And if you go now to what we call Israel or the Holy Land, you can go meet Samaritan people, but their land has shrunk, and they are like in few villages around that area. And they're almost becoming extinct because they don't have the flexibility to marry outside of their religion, and they're shrinking. A lot of people are also escaping. So that but it's amazing. 2,000 years later, and with um, Roman occupation, Persian occupation, Babylonian, Assyrian, Muslim occupation lasted almost 1,400 years. The last 400 of that was the Ottoman Empire. I mean, people just marched in and out of that land, and all these people, the people who lived there, they often got intermixed because some Roman soldiers stayed, some Assyrians stayed, some Babylonians stayed, and that's why Galilee was known as like a melting pot almost of all these different nationalities that came together, intermarried. So when Jesus grew up in this little town here, you see it's called Nazareth, and these are the other towns that he went around the Sea of Galilee a lot. So he left Nazareth and went this way a lot to the Sea of Galilee and walked around that area. And that's where he recruited some of his what we call the apostles. He had to deal with that. And the episode I wanted to talk about today is Jesus was in Judea. This is in John chapter 4. And he left Judea and was going back to Galilee. And guess what? He had to walk through this area, which is very dangerous. And you'll see it in the story. This is in the Gospel of John. So he left Judea. This is chapter 4, verse 3. He left Judea and came again to Galilee. But wait, I'm going to stop sharing for now. But they just kind of like, oh, by the way, as he was traveling back, he had to go through Samaritan territory. So the reader of this is going like, oh my goodness, what happened? So, and then he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the field which Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Now, remember last time I was telling you how if Jesus would have gone to the Gentiles, see, the Samaritans were different than the Gentiles because they felt that they had the right Jewish religion. They still do. They feel like they have the right Jewish religion. So when they ran into Jesus, who is now, he's looking like a Jewish teacher, going through, first they knew he was not Samaritan. Just from the way he's dressed, they would know he's not one of them. And so he should have kept very low profile, just snuck through, did not cause any trouble. Being a teacher also probably bought him some credit to get safe passage and get through. But back to the fact that we're talking about the field of Jacob to his son of Joseph. To most people who are not Jewish, that Jacob and Joseph would mean nothing to them. It's not in their history book. It's not in their religion. So you wouldn't know what they're talking about. That's why Jesus felt that his ministry would succeed and expand much quicker amongst the Jewish people before the Gentiles could pick up on it, before it can become global. But he really wanted to fix also the movement, the Abrahamic movement that we talked about last week, to bring it back into what it's supposed to do, which is to awaken the whole world into the kingdom of God and be all inclusive. So here Jesus goes, now Jacob's well was there, and Jesus was tired by the fatigue of the journey. So long, as I told you many times, Jesus walked and walked and walked and walked because that's the main mode of transportation. And so he was tired and sat down by the well. And this is a blessed well. Every Jewish person knows it. It happened to be in the Samaritan territory. And it was about the 6th hour. And there came a woman from Samaria to draw water. Okay, so now we have a situation. She's coming because she is carrying her jar, and she's coming to get water for her household. And here comes sitting a Jewish teacher. Now, what should have happened is she would have snuck in, got the water, and walked away. But Jesus had a different idea. And Jesus said to her, "Give me water to drink." He asked her to share the water with him as she was pulling it out of the well. His disciples had entered into the city to buy food for themselves. So, again, the storyteller is telling us that there was nobody but Jesus and this woman. So now Jesus is violating code. And that code is sacred. So he's speaking with a woman. So as a Jewish man, as a Jewish teacher, does not speak to a foreign woman by herself. You try to avoid that. It's not safe. And it's not the custom. Then he, not only that, he asks her for water, and he knew that she was Samaritan. So that's again crossing another barrier. So Jesus is plowing through barriers without even paying attention. He's just, and I think he intently did that because he's thirsty, and he's not afraid to actually open up the kingdom to other people. So that's one of the episodes where we see Jesus opening up outside of just the group that he was a part of, the Jewish people. He's opening up to the Samaritans who were despised by the Jews and vice versa. Now his disciples were not with him. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it? You are a Jew, and yet you ask me for a drink? Who am a Samaritan woman?" And then the commentary is, "For Jews have no social intercourse with Samaritans." So she recognized it. She's like, she's startled. Like, why? Not only are you speaking to me, but you're also asking me for water, and you don't recognize. Are you blind? Jesus answered, saying to her, "If you only knew the gift of God, and who is the man who said to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." So now remember, we are not reading Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We're not reading a story from that perspective. We're reading from the perspective of post Jesus' death, John talking to disciples and new followers of the message. So here, basically, the idea that Jesus was the Christ is a lot more acceptable in the book of John. So here Jesus is also, we're being told, now remember, no disciples with him, and he's just one with this Samaritan woman. So the fact that this story made it to us is because the disciples do come back and there's an interaction with them to capture what took place. So now he's telling her, if you just knew who's talking to you, you're looking at it from the old perspective of a Jew and a Samaritan woman, but you're talking to the Christ. You're talking to the one who's sent to bring the kingdom back. The woman said to him, My Lord, you have no leather bucket and no deep well. Where do you get the living water? So she took him literally, I could give you living water, and she's going like, you're just a tired dude sitting by the well and asking me for water. Now you're telling me you could give me living water? What? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well, and he himself drank from it, and his son and his sheep? So this is a blessed old well that's been around, uh, for a very long time, and the Samaritans thought of it very highly. And I think the Jewish people did too. It just was outside of their territory, outside of their borders. Jesus, Jesus answered, saying to her, Everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again. So he's talking metaphorically. He's not talking about this water as what we have as in a glass or in a bottle. He's talking about the living water is something else. And remember, there is a lot of metaphoric language that's being used, especially in John more than the other gospels. But it's everywhere. It's just the way people speak. Jesus answered, saying to her, Everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water which I give him shall never thirst. But the same water which I give him shall become in him a well of water springing up to life everlasting. Back to the question about how do I manifest the kingdom? Once the kingdom is in you, that's the living water that you're taking in. And once that living water is in you and you start blossoming as a kingdom participant, you will give life to everything you touch, to everything you are a part of. That's how you participate. That's but you have to incorporate it. It has to be a part of your new DNA, the DNA of the kingdom. You're just bringing it to life. It's part of you anyway. It's your birthright. All of us have that birthright, but now you're actually awakened it. You're actually participating in it, and that's where the change happens. And this is what Jesus is talking about. The woman said to him, My Lord, give me of this water so that I may not thirst again and need not come to draw from here. Again, she's being literal. It's like, oh, you have something that if I drink from it, I'll never be thirsty again. It's the teaching, right? Jesus said to her, Go and tell your husband and come here. So he had an ability to also read and know. And she said to him, I have no husband. So now one more, it's like the teller of this story, that this woman is embodying so many things that could be wrong, that Jesus shouldn't be dealing with. So now she has a questionable reputation. So she's Samaritan, she is a woman, and she has no husband. And yet Jesus tells her, Go bring your husband to poke at her. She said to him, I have no husband. So then for you have had, this is Jesus replying to her when she said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. So she's been married 5 times. We don't know, widowed, divorced, and now she's living with a 6th man, but not in marriage. And now, so even in today's judgment, we might think that that's living outside the lines. In Jewish religion, if you were widowed or divorced and had your divorce papers, you're free. You could do whatever you want to do, because not the whole dowry system and the property stuff is all kind of nullified once your husband dies, or once you get your divorce papers and you have them with you. That's why Jesus said, when you divorce a woman, make sure you give her her papers. Because if you throw her out without giving her the divorce papers, and she goes and lives with somebody else, or takes on, another man wants to be with her, then it becomes adultery, because the property side of things is not resolved. That's why the divorce papers are so important. So so he said, what you said is true. The guy you're living with is not your husband. Then the woman said to him, my Lord, I see that you are a prophet. So the fact that he knew that about her made her believe that, okay, he has something extra. He read something in her that most people do not know or do not see. So that basically opened her up to receive more of him. Our forefathers worshipped on this mountain, and you say the place where men must worship is in Jerusalem. Now, Jesus doesn't say that. She's assuming that as a Jewish teacher, that's what he believes. Jesus said to her, this is so important. These stories, we don't hear them often in the church and broken down that way, because they unpack a lot of culture, a lot of things that, you just think, oh, the Jesus talking to the Samaritan woman, but that woman, believe me, the time is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will they worship the Father. What? So he's predicting that the temple in Jerusalem and this holy mountain, which had a temple on it, will not be the place. You worship what you do not know, but we worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. So he's saying that now he's critiquing the Samaritan way of believing, because they locked in, and that their history goes back to the split between the northern tribes, and there is a lot of reasons why they basically separated, and then they developed a different approach to the religion. But the time is coming, and it is here, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father also desires worshippers such as these. See, so he's now saying, if you can worship the Father in spirit and truth, not in a temple, not based on a religion, not based on a grouping, in and out grouping, that if you open up and you take the kingdom in, and even though you're Samaritan, even though you're Jewish, or as we said last week, even if you're Roman, or from any other, the woman that was the Syrian woman, or the Canaanite woman in Tyre and Sidon, where Jesus was, all these people were able to come in through spirit. The religion of Jesus was wide open, had no borders. It had rules about behavior, about how you manifest the kingdom, but it never had rules around your bloodlines and nationalities and so forth, which is what these Samaritans and at the time of Jesus and throughout the history, Jewish people held on to. So for God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is the Mashiach is coming. When he is come, he will teach us everything. So they're waiting also for the Messiah. Jesus said to her, I am he who is speaking to you. I am the Messiah. So in the Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we don't hear Jesus speaking this way. Here he's declaring that, hey, I am the Messiah. I'm the one everybody is waiting for. While he was talking, his disciples came Can you imagine the disciples now? They're watching, they're climbing up the mountain towards the well, and they're watching Jesus speaking with a Samaritan woman, and they're going like, while he was talking, his disciples came and were surprised that he was talking with a married woman. So yeah, just by looking at her, they knew that she's married. They, probably had, a specific type of clothing or head covering that gave them that. But no one said to him, "What do you want?" or "What are you talking?" Or "What are you talking with her?" The woman then left her water jar and went to the city and said to the men. So she ran, and running into Jesus was very powerful, and she got the full blast one-on-one with him. "Come and see a man who told me everything which I have done. What, is he the Christ?" And the men went out. So now a bunch of Samaritan men are coming up to meet Jesus, went out of the city and came to him. During the interval, his disciples begged him, saying, "Teacher, eat." So now they're again, so this story has drink. Come Thursday, I need to drink, but the water that I have to give you, the teachings I have to give you, are the living water, is what will give you life everlasting. Now his disciples who went to town to grab some food and came back to feed him because they knew he was tired and he was going to go sit by the well and wait for them. They want him to eat. Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work." So his food is, again, just like his water. His water, it doesn't come in. His water comes out and blesses anybody who experiences it. And his food is his work. So that, again, the metaphor of food and water here is totally, the physical is being minimized. The real water and the real food that they're trying to give him is less valuable than the spiritual food and water that he's bringing to them. Do you, and this so do the will of him, again, not my will. So in the Lord's Prayer, say, "Thy will be done." Jesus was very aware that his mission was to bring the will of God, was to manifest God's love on earth, God's love for humanity, and bring us back and put the burden on us to act in the same capacity, to be the children of God, which means act like God. That's all children of God meant, is, you act, and this, you're coming from a tribal, Semitic, Near Eastern perspective, that the child is an image of the father. The child does the same thing that the father does. And a lot of them, they do the same exact work. You inherit the same land, or you inherit the same store, or the trade route, or the camels that go between trade routes. And generation after generation after generation, all of you with the same last name, or the son of the son of the son of, you keep doing what you do. So when Jesus says you are children of God, he means that you need to do the work of God, and you need to be the image of God, which has no specific role, because God is the father of all, or the parent of all. So Jesus said, "So my food, do you not say that after 4 months come the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the field, which have turned white and have long been ready for the harvest. And he who reaps receives wages and gathers fruit to life everlasting, so that the sower and the reaper may rejoice together." So he's now telling them that basically the world is wide open for you to share these teachings, to bring people into the kingdom, and not that, don't set limits. And he's now in Samaria, and he's talking to the Samaritans. And remember, they made it now up to go meet with him. And he's telling his disciples right in front of all of them, these are a part of the kingdom. you need to open it up. You need to make sure that you bring everybody in. That's his global message. That's the message that Abraham had, the blessing that when God blessed Abraham and all his descendants, that to be able to bring God to everybody, to bring Allah to everybody. And Jesus was another emphasizer of that message, taking it away from its tribal setting, taking away the idea of temples being the place where God lives or where the religion happens, and taking it back into the fields, into the next to the well, with women, with men, with people who are supposed to be your enemies. Bring them all in. And that's why when we go to try to change the world, we change it with this woman who ran back into her village and told everybody, I just been drinking from the true well, the well of truth, which was the Jesus teaching. And that's where we need to be, not in politics only, not in social activity only, not just for our family or our nation or our flag or our school. We need to open up. And the more you open up, the more the kingdom opens up with you. I'll stop here. We are at 4:42. I see one question. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A window. Okay. So I'm reading it because I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment. Yeah, I think it's just a comment. No problem. You probably got the gist of the message. The person joined late, and well, you know what, we love having you here. There is no need to ever apologize if you're late. This time is just about us being together. It's about us sharing the teachings of Jesus, asking questions, or bringing. I've always I haven't done it in a while, but I've asked people before to share with me anything that they've experienced that had to do with the kingdom, anything that they've done in their day to day, because I know that all of you have opportunities multiple times a day, if not every minute you're breathing. It's to me, I try not to use the word amazing lightly, but it truly is when you have that when you open up and you want to participate, how many opportunities come your way to touch people, to touch lives, and to change lives, and at the same time grow and grow and grow. Because it just like Jesus with his ministry, he constantly, when you start reading about how he came and how he went to the desert and started opening up and started asking the questions of himself, what's my ministry going to be like, all the way to his last words on the cross. He just kept expanding and growing, and with him the apostles and the disciples and all the people who interacted with him. Was the woman at the well Magdalene? Uh, no, no, no. I don't think it was Mary of Magdala. Um, she sometimes people, because there are very few women mentioned in the ministry and during Jesus's life, that Mary was a different and Mary, I think, was a very honored part of the movement. But you're dealing with tradition, and that's something you need to be very aware of, that when you're reading the whether it's the Hebrew Bible or what we call the New Testament, you're talking there is an intermix of culture and spirituality that is well understood in the culture of Jesus. And when we look at it with today's eyes and today's expectations, sometimes we don't see it that way. And that's why Mary of Magdala is not mentioned a lot, but she's mentioned in key moments, especially like when that they run to the tomb after Jesus died, and she was one of the first people there. And that's the way to honor her participation in the movement. But a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Errico had a question about Paul and women in the church, and he answered that it's culture. Paul was talking from a cultural perspective. He had nothing to do with Jesus as far as like women shouldn't speak in church or in the synagogue, or women should cover their hair. And the other day, I was at a monastery, and they made us dress up, and so I think I shared that with you a couple of weeks ago. And my wife had to cover. We don't own scarves and things like that, but because it's cultural and it continued to exist, some churches are still enforcing it to this day. I think Jesus would be, and I don't want to speak against any religion, but I don't think that Jesus would have kept you from sitting with him if your head was not covered. And just like with this Samaritan woman, he should have not talked with her. He broke that barrier. He broke that barrier to bring in the message of the kingdom to the Samaritan people firsthand, and it paid off. She ran and brought the men up, and the movement started, growing in Samaria. So, and he'd said that the fields are ripe, so go and harvest. It's good that you asked about Mary, because some people think that it might have been Mary, but Mary was not. It was from Magdal, which is a different area. How to deal with darkness? Um, Light, and Jesus talked about how very little light can remove a lot of darkness. So if you stay the light, then you don't have to worry about the darkness. And the darkness should not ever make you feel afraid. And that dark forces, they're from us. They're our fellow citizens. They're our fellow city people. They're our fellow children. We sometimes, are proud of them when they join the government, or they get a job. But nowadays, nobody is safe, because part of our political and corporate structure kind of intermix together. They collaborate. And the foundational piece is that the loyalty of the people is co-opted or corrupted into believing that my first loyalty when I put the uniform on, whether even nowadays even male people, the male person who delivers your mail, because they're government employees, they're being deputized to do other jobs just because you're a government employee. Then we can tell you to do that, and they're accepting it. And it's like their livelihood. It's really their true bread, right? So, but again, their worry about their day-to-day bread trumps the everlasting bread that Jesus is talking about. And that's where we lost a lot of our balance. That's why the kingdom is not manifesting everywhere. But back to your question about darkness, that's a dark moment for a male person to go and behave in a way that he or she did not expect to do out of their job. Your light, if you interact with them, it will give them relief. Your forgiveness will give them relief. And that the darkness is not powerful, because, as I said, very little light can dissipate, can make darkness disappear. Put a candle in a very dark room, very flickering small light, it will light up the whole room. That's my metaphor today, is be that light. And if you have something more specific, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you. Lovely comment. Not really a question, but I don't think Paul had a clue what Jesus was really teaching. Um, Again, Paul was handed stuff from the early church. So change was already happening. Paul happened to be a part of that change. And Paul's um, weakness was that he was an educated man. See, when Jesus recruited when he handpicked the disciples, he handpicked innocent, uneducated fishermen from Galilee. When Paul came into the movement, had an awakening, and actually got Jesus, but then he was so full of other ideas and so embedded in the culture and the traditions that he leaned on that when he was asked a question that he should have said, I do not know, how Jesus would have answered that. See, if Paul would have used that line, I don't know, I have no, and he did. God bless him. Paul, if in his letters, he did mention there is no precedence in Jesus. I'm giving you this from me, from Paul. So, but the church doesn't tell you that. They use it as it's here. It's the Holy Bible. It's the scripture. It's not scripture, it's Paul. And often Paul is coming from a Jewish perspective, a Pharisee perspective, a traditional perspective. Jesus was global. That's why he spoke with them. That's why he didn't care about her reputation. He didn't care she was a woman by herself. He didn't care about any of that. That's what makes Jesus Jesus and Paul Paul. So you're again, I try not to be very hard. It's hard to kind of like, let Paul get away with some of this stuff because the church put his writings almost par with Jesus, and people do not know, they don't get educated, and the ministers don't stand up and tell you, hey, I'm reading from Paul now. It's some fun reading. It has some good stuff, but take it with a grain of salt. They'd never say that because that Paul's teachings are so dangerous when you compare them with Jesus and the way that the church interpreted it. And when I say the church, all the churches, all religion that uses Paul in their talks and their lessons are not comfortable with Jesus. And that's a lot of what's happening in the West, and the Eastern Christianity is being destroyed. Literally today and yesterday and day before yesterday, churches in the East are being attacked, they're being bombed. Christian people are still, and there's been a huge movement that the Eastern Christianity and the foundational Christianity where Jesus came in that land and the land around it is that it's becoming empty of Christians because of what's happening politically and militarily. So, and we are complacent. We as a country, the United States is very complacent, and it hurts so much that the Western Christianity, the evangelicals, the dominant forces in Christianity today, the rich ones, play a huge role in destroying Christianity in the Near East. It's devastating. And the silence that we see from these ministers and these organized uh, churches is mind-boggling and so disappointing. But I don't let that darkness stop me from being the light. If I would just sit here and read the news and listen, that the other day I turned on a TV show, and the minister did not. I joked that we should have a drinking game every time he said end time, end time, end time. So much of Christianity today, this new Christianity, is about the end of time, and they want to bring it. They want to accelerate it. A lot of the new movement is like, let the Near East burn right now because that's what's going to bring Jesus back. They're reading Revelation. They're not reading Jesus. Jesus is about light, about living water, about living food. That's what we need. And Jesus wins always. The light will always win. And the people who want to do end time, their time is going to end way before the message of Jesus ends. And you're the ones who are carrying that message forward. We are the ones who bring that kingdom to life. Okay, another, let me see here. Thank you. As this, okay, sorry. This neighbor is not a believer, and important that he is leaning, sharing concerns. We have spoken about this, and he rejected the thought. We can't. I know his mother wanted him to be a believer, but wanted him to be a believer. but she has passed away. Individuals will go through their thing, and that's the other thing is Jesus said when he sent his disciples out, he said, the people who don't open their doors to you, don't put a curse on them. Don't insult them. Don't, because some of them wanted to bring hellfire on them. They wanted to destroy their homes. And he said, no, 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 you shake the dust off your feet and you move on. You don't let that slow you down. The kingdom has, the fields are ripe. There are so many people who are open and wanting to hear this, and they don't get it. They don't get it in their churches. They don't get it in their businesses. They don't get it in their families. So yes, maybe this neighbor's mom wanted him to believe, but it's not a belief. It's a way of living. It's a way of being. So don't let that slow you down and love them. Love them because love changes people. If they feel the conflict that I have the message of the kingdom and I'm trying to bring you into it and you're resisting and I'm not comfortable with that, that pushes them away. Accept them as they are, love them as they are, and highlight the good things that they do. They must do something. They must open a door for somebody or do something, right? And build that up. That's why Jesus always built the goodness of people. The peacemakers, the people who do anything good. He gave them more power. He pushed more energy into them. And that's part of how we lift our communities. That's how we lift the world up, is not by looking at belief system or even errors that people make. It's by taking any good that they do and blowing it up and making it seem like, oh wow, this is the most amazing thing. Keep doing that one thing over and over and over, because that makes the world a better place for them and for us. Well, we're almost on time. I will read your comments. You have a lot of lovely comments. And I even have uh, a message in the chat. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Your support keeps our ministry moving forward, keeps me, Dr. Erico, and Lynn able to serve and hold these sessions. So we really appreciate your support. We know all this is on love offering basis. I got messages on YouTube about how do we expand this work. It expands through all of us. I'm doing my best on social media and YouTube, and we're growing in numbers of subscribers. I know Tom does amazing work and Rebecca does amazing work in spreading the word. So just keep first, live it. First, be happy. A lot of firsts. Be happy. Know that you're loved, and know that you have unlimited amount of love to give yourself and everybody who comes in contact with you. And then you can reach even beyond that. I pray for people all over the world. I love people all over the world, and I know that they know it and they feel it. So do the same, and we will continue to manifest the kingdom. The kingdom will never die because God never dies. And in our community, in our ministry, love is king, and Jesus's teachings and God's presence is king as well. So go and have a lovely rest of your week. And next week, Dr. Eric will be with you. Thank you so much.